Welcome to Tiny Home Reveal. Discover hidden rooms, smart designs, and unbelievable tiny homes from around the world. Let's get started. Imagine never fighting with the sun again. No more squinting through a window at 7 a.m. No more roasting on your couch every afternoon because your living room just happens to face west. No more freezing bedroom in winter because it's stuck on the shady side of the house forever. Now imagine a house that just turns. You press a button, or it turns on its own, and the entire building rotates on its foundation to chase the sun across the sky, like a 500-square-foot sunflower. This isn't science fiction. It's been built more than once. In Oregon, in Germany, in Australia, and in 2026, it's getting a serious upgrade. Stick around, because by the end of this video you'll understand exactly how these houses spin, why almost nobody builds them, and whether this could actually be the smartest tiny house design nobody's talking about. Before we get into it, if you're into tiny houses, off-grid living, or just weird, brilliant engineering, hit subscribe now, because we're about to break down the actual mechanics, the real costs, and the surprising problems nobody mentions in those wow videos. Let's get into it. Let's start simple. A rotating tiny house sits on a turntable instead of a fixed foundation. That turntable can be turned by hand, by a small electric motor, or, in the more advanced versions, by a solar tracking system that automatically follows the sun's path across the sky. The idea isn't new. Architects have been playing with rotating homes since at least the 1960s. But the tiny house version, small, affordable, and genuinely livable, really took off in the 2010s when the tiny house movement collided with the passive solar design movement. And the logic is almost embarrassingly simple. If your house can't move to a better lot, why not make the house itself move instead? Here's the physics behind why people bother. A south-facing window in winter can pull in enormous amounts of free heat, sunlight passing through glass and warming your floors and walls. But that same window in summer can turn your living room into an oven. Fixed houses are stuck picking one compromise. A rotating house doesn't have to compromise. It can face the winter sun head-on to soak up heat, then spin away from the summer sun to stay cool, and adjust throughout the day to control glare and light. So who's actually built these? Let's look at 3 real examples, because this is where it gets interesting. First, Portland, Oregon. Architect Ben Kaiser built a tiny house called 359, just 144 square feet, 12 feet by 12 feet, on 2 levels. It sits on a manually operated rotating base. Kaiser's pitch was almost poetic. If the sun is too hot, turn the house's back to it. If you want winter light, let it shine in. The rotation is so simple that, according to Kaiser, just one adult, or 2 kids pushing a bar, can spin the entire house around by hand. It doesn't do a full 360-degree turn on purpose, so the electrical and water lines don't get twisted and tangled. And notably, this thing runs on almost nothing. A single small 110-volt heater keeps the whole place warm on cold days, because the sun is doing most of the heavy lifting. Second, the Heliotrop, in Freiburg, Germany. This one's a different level of ambitious. It's a fully rotating cylindrical home that turns to face the sun in winter and turns away in summer, using a thick, heavily insulated wall on one side to block heat when it's not wanted. The roof is covered in solar panels. And here's the number that should stop you. Those panels reportedly generate 4 to 6 times more energy than the house actually consumes in a year. This isn't just a house with solar panels bolted on. The rotation itself is part of the solar strategy, angling the panels for maximum output through the day. The design was successful enough that 2 more were built afterward in Germany. Third, the Girasole House, in Canberra, Australia. The name literally means sunflower in Italian. It sits on a steel frame with 28 wheels and a rotating motor system so efficient that, according to reporting on the build, it needs about as much power as a single light bulb to turn the entire house. The owner can control the rotation from an iPad, spinning the home to chase sunlight or chase a view, whichever matters more that day. And one more worth mentioning. A rotating home in Norway, built by Jarl Hegerland on a turntable-style foundation, with a motor built into the base and remote control operation. Norwegian winters are brutal on sunlight, so a house that can chase every last minute of sun exposure isn't a gimmick there. It's genuinely useful for staying warm and sane through a long, dark season. For countries, for completely different approaches. Same basic idea. Don't fight the sun, follow it. Okay, let's get into the actual mechanics, because this is the part most videos skip. At the simplest level, you need three things: a turntable base, a drive system, and, if you want it automatic, a tracking system. The turntable is usually a large steel ring or platform with wheels, bearings, or rollers underneath, similar in principle to a car turntable you'd see in a showroom. The house sits on top of this ring instead of normal foundation. The drive system is what actually moves it. On the manual end, like Kaiser's 359, that's literally a bar you push, using basic leverage. The same reason a heavy door swings easily once you get it moving. On the motorized end, you're looking at a small electric motor, sometimes paired with gear reduction, because, and this is the key engineering detail, the sun crosses the sky incredibly slowly. You don't need power. You need patience. A 1.5 horsepower motor was enough to rotate an entire 5,000 square foot rotating home on MT Helix in California. For something tiny house-sized, you need even less. Now, the tracking part. If you want the house to follow the sun automatically instead of being turned by hand or joystick, you need a solar tracking system. The same core technology used to angle solar panel arrays on solar farms. There are two flavors. Single-axis trackers rotate one direction, typically east to west, following the sun through the day. Dual-axis trackers also tilt, adjusting for the sun's higher or lower path across the seasons. A basic tracking system works on a simple loop. Light sensors or a clock-based supposition calculation tell the system where the sun currently is. A controller compares that to the current angle, and if the difference is big enough, a motor nudges the platform to correct it, typically checking and adjusting every 30 to 60 seconds. One theme that engineers who actually build these systems keep repeating: it's rarely the sun that breaks a tracker. It's the wind. A gust hits the structure sideways, and if the mount and motor aren't built to handle that side load, that's where things wear out or fail, not from the actual work of tracking. So any serious rotating house design has to treat wind load as a bigger engineering problem than the rotation itself. And here's the detail almost every rotating house shares. None of them do a complete, unlimited 360-degree spin. Why? Plumbing and electrical wiring. Water pipes and power cables have to connect to the ground somehow. And if a house just kept spinning the same direction forever, those lines would wind up like a phone cord and eventually snap. So designers either limit the rotation to just under a full circle and then reverse, or they use specialized rotating connectors, the same kind of technology used in industrial turntables, to let power and water pass through without tangling. If this sounds this good, you're probably wondering, why isn't every tiny house on a turntable? Here's the honest answer: cost. Building a proper rotating foundation, the steel ring, the bearings, the motor, the rotating utility connections, is genuinely expensive engineering, on top of the cost of the house itself. Kaiser's original off-grid version of 359 was estimated around $90,000. And that's before you count that most builders would need to hire specialized structural engineers, not just a typical tiny house contractor. Complexity. A regular tiny house has one job: sit still. A rotating one has moving parts that need maintenance, bearings that wear, motors that can fail, and connections that have to survive years of twisting and untwisting without leaking water or shorting out electricity. Every rotating house we looked at solved this differently, which tells you there's no standardized, mass-producible solution yet. This is custom, one-off engineering, every single time. Building codes and financing. Most residential codes and mortgage lenders are built around the assumption that a house doesn't move. A rotating foundation can complicate permitting, insurance, and financing in ways a normal slab or pier foundation never does. Diminishing returns for a small house. Here's an honest, slightly less exciting point. A tiny house already has a small footprint and a small roof. The energy savings and passive heating benefits of rotation matter more on a bigger structure like the Heliotrop, where a whole facade's worth of glass and solar panels are being optimally aimed. On something 12 feet square, you're paying for a lot of complex engineering to optimize a fairly small surface area. But, and this is the flip side worth sitting with for off-grid tiny houses specifically, where every watt matters and there's no backup power grid to lean on, even a modest gain in passive heat and solar output can be the difference between running a generator constantly and not needing one at all. So what does 2026 actually look like for this idea? The tiny house market itself has kept pushing toward affordable, functional solar setups. Solar-powered tiny homes selling for under $18,000 have hit the market recently, proving that off-grid solar tiny living doesn't require a mansion-sized budget. Meanwhile, dual-axis solar tracking technology, the same tech a rotating house needs, has kept getting cheaper and smarter through hobbyist and DIY communities, with guides now claiming efficiency gains of up to 40% over fixed panels when tracking is done well. Put those two trends together, and you can see where this is going. The pieces, cheap solar, cheap microcontrollers, better small motors, better tracking algorithms, are all getting more accessible at the same time. The rotating tiny house of the future probably won't need a custom architect and a $100,000 budget. It'll probably be a kit, a turntable base, a small tracking motor, and a solar-ready tiny house shell, sold as a package. Nobody's shipping that kit yet, but every ingredient for it already exists, scattered across a few dozen custom builds and hobbyist tracker projects around the world. So, is a rotating tiny house a genius design or an expensive gimmick? Honestly, it's a bit of both. For the right person, someone building off-grid, someone who wants maximum sun in winter and shade in summer, someone who just wants to wake up facing the sunrise and end the day facing the sunset, it's a small, elegant piece of engineering that solves a problem fixed houses can never solve. For most people, it's still too complex and too costly to be practical. But that gap is closing every year. If you want to see how these tiny solar setups actually perform, or how people are building off-grid on $18,000 budgets right now, that's exactly what we're covering in the next video. So make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications, because you don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching till the end. Drop a comment. Would you actually live in a house that spins? See you in the next one.